you would go in there and all of Dalton would be in there. And I remember, working as a little kid in there, and everybody would come in, and you knew everybody from the store, and everybody knew you. It was a great community, and I think it was a special time and a special place, and I don't know that that really exists anymore. I hope, that Dalton gets back to that.
This episode of Stories from the Hollow is brought to you by the Dalton Historical Society and Whispered Myth Studio.
Do you remember the clang of the blacksmith's hammer echoing through Bailey Hollow? The laughter of children playing by the creek? The stories whispered on porch swings as the sun dipped below the hills? These are the echoes of our past, the tales that built Dalton, the memories that shaped Bailey Hollow. For generations, these stories have been passed down like cherished heirlooms. But now, for the very first time, they've been captured, bound within the recordings of our new podcast, Stories of the Hollow. Join us as we unveil the history of our beloved town, a journey through time, a celebration of our heritage. Hear the stories as they were meant to be told. Discover the lives that paved our streets, the dreams that built our community. In Stories from the Hollow by the Dalton Historical Society. Jeff Cornell and I are very pleased to have our guest, Mr. Pat Yasinskas, a veteran sports reporter who worked for ESPN, and most relevantly to this podcast, the son of Paul and Marie Yasinskas, who once owned George Slocum's Dalton General Market on West Main Street in Dalton, now owned by Constantino's as Bailey's Cafe and Events. Welcome to Stories from the Hollows, Pat. The building that housed your parents' store, known as Paul's Market, has had quite a history. I believe that Calvin Briggs operated the first store there in 1873. You're not old enough to remember that.
No, that one I don't remember.
I maybe.
After him came names like James Millard Cash Store, Elmer Rice, Carl Hesser, and of course George Slocum. For years, the building that housed your father's store was the anchor structure of a two-building complex built by J. Merton Purdy in 1896 and was whittled down to just the main building and the present parking lot after a catastrophic fire many years later. But that's enough of me and the pre-Paul's Market history, Pat. Please tell us about your parents, Paul's Market, and your memories of your life in Dalton. First, when did your parents buy the market? How long did they operate it? What led them to own a market? And how old were you at the time?
Okay. Well, try to summarize a couple of those questions together. They bought the market in 1972 from Don and Marion Westcott, who were related to Jeff Cornell, and they were both of our neighbors, Jeff's neighbors and my neighbors. And I remember being at Don and Marion's cottage at Baylor's Lake the night that my parents and the Westcotts worked out a deal. It was probably sometime in the late summer, early fall of 1972. And I think my parents started working there. I think they did a month, if my memory is correct. They did a month with Don and Marion, kind of working with them to get them used to working the store. And then I believe officially January 1st of 1973 was when my parents took over. And they ran the store until January 1st of 1984, when they sold the store, but they kept the building for quite a few years afterwards. And I believe it was 2006 or 2007 that they finally sold the building to George Slocum. And prior to George rented from them for a little while, and several other tenants rented from them through the years. But basically, they owned and operated the store from 1972 through 1984.
Do you know what led them to go into the market business?
Yes, and I want to touch on that because that's very important.
Good.
Growing up in Scranton, my father's mother, my grandmother, owned a grocery store, a small one in North Scranton. I believe it was on Bloom Avenue or somewhere in that neighborhood. My mom also came from a family that owned their own business. They owned Rainey's Florist in North Scranton for many years. And in later years, when my parents were adults and having a family, my father worked at Affiliated Foods. He was the manager of the meat department there, and was involved. Affiliated Foods back in those days served all the grocery stores of northeastern Pennsylvania. So my father knew a lot of the store owners, and it was kind of always his dream, since his mom had the store, to have a store of his own. And my mom had the background in a family business as well. She worked as a bookkeeper at Scranton Building Block. So she was familiar with the bookkeeping end, the financial end of it. And he knew how to run a store and how to, most importantly, to run the meat business. And that's what brought them into it. It was kind of always a dream of theirs. And they bought the store. As you said, it was a two storefront unit, but it was one building. And they bought the store with the full intention of expanding it to be for that building to hold the entire store. It took a few years for that to happen. The Dalton Library was located in that other half of the building when they first took over. And that, when they made it known that they wanted to expand, that's what led to the Dalton Library building its new building and being where they are today.
Now, they also own the building next to the market on Main
Correct.
Street, right, Pat?
Yes, the building going towards what used to be the bank. And that was another two storefront building. Now, when
that's the one that you met. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when they bought it, and I'm sure Jeff remembers this gentleman very well, Bella Krupis, who was
I was going to talk to you about Bella Krupis.
Yeah, he was the shoemaker.
You're
And,
younger than me.
he's-
I'm an old guy, but I thought Bella was the most interesting character.
He was tremendous.
First of all, when you talk to somebody today, I have a granddaughter who just graduated from high school, and you say, you used to be able to get shoes fixed, and they look at you like you have two heads because people don't get their shoes fixed anymore. And Bella had in that building a machine that was wonderful. As a kid, I used to love to go and watch it. It was a huge electric motor and a belt drive onto a camshaft, which went across most of the front of the store, and it did all kinds of things. So if you took your shoes in, one part of the camshaft could, do this, and another part of the camshaft could do something else. And Bela was just an interesting guy. You did know him and his wife?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Do you remember Bela and his wife?
No, his wife had passed away. I don't know. It might have been while I was very young, but it was before my memory. I remember him talking about her and everything. But no, I did not know her.
Eastern European, Hungary, maybe?
Hungary, yes.
Yeah, he was a wonderful character in Dalton, and everybody went to get their shoes fixed. That was
and I remember, the machinery that you talked about, and I also remember walking in. The smell of leather was overwhelming in there, but it was a great smell, and it gave a real home feel to it. And
he was an interesting guy. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, and I've got one other Bella story that I really want to tell. In later years, after my parents bought that building, and Bella was still there, there was a business called BJ's Pizza. It was operated by Barbara Ruddy and Jean Neary. They were sisters-in-law. The Ruddys were a longtime Dalton family. Matter of fact, their sons Pat and Tim, who are good friends of mine, still live in Dalton. But anyway, they opened BJ's Pizza probably sometime late 70s. And pizza was kind of a new thing to Dalton at that time. Yeah. And obviously, Bella being from Hungary, pizza was a new thing to him. So he went and bought a pizza one night, and he took it and he carried it, put it under his arm like a school kid would carry their books, and carried it up. And I don't know if you remember where Bella lived.
Yes.
It was on the other side of the highway, next to where that garage used to be. He was there, and he carried that pizza that way all the way home. And when he got home, obviously, it didn't look very much like a pizza, but Bella still ate it and came back the next day and told him how good it was.
Oh, you're right. Nobody knew what pizza was in Dalton at that time. He also,
That's right.
He used to carve things. A couple of times, a Christmas present from him was a bar of ivory salt that he would carve into the shape of an animal.
Really?
And I had never seen that before, but in the winter.
I kind of remember that. And I think my parents might have gotten some gifts from him. Yeah. And I also, I hadn't thought about this in years, but Bello used to come to our house, obviously after his wife died. My parents would invite him for a lot of holidays. And Bello was kind of a regular at our house on the holidays.
Yeah, he was an interesting guy, and you're right. After the wife died, he would come to my grandparents' house. The Gamars were my grandparents.
Yes, I remember.
Gamar. Yep, yeah.
Yeah.
Dalton Central Knits and Gifts is in that building now, Pat. And they have both sides of the building. How
Okay.
long, rather, how busy was Dalton's Main Street back in the days of Paul's Market? And
It
did the
was
market
busy.
have any competition in town at that time?
Not really, because in those days, we were kind of like a full service market. You could basically go in there and get anything you wanted. Now, Browning's, McGonagall's was the other store, across from where the fire hall is.
Right.
I'm not sure what's there these days, but anyway, that store was there, but that was kind of a convenience store where people would stop and, get their milk or get their cigarettes on the way home from work. But Dalton in those years was wonderful. And I like to think that my parents' store was kind of like the social hub of Dalton. You would go in there and all of Dalton would be in there. And I remember, working as a little kid in there, and everybody would come in, and you knew everybody from the store, and everybody knew you. It was a great community, and I think it was a special time and a special place. And I don't know that really exists anymore. I hope that Dalton gets back to that, but I think it was truly a wonderful time for Dalton.
Pat, did you ever help out at the store?
I did. My dad was very good about allowing me to play sports, and as you can see, I'm wearing touch of home, my Lackawanna Trail baseball hat. But when I wasn't playing sports, I would help out at the store. Just doing odds and ends, taking out garbage, burning garbage, which is probably illegal now, but in those days, we had a dumpster or, a pit outside where we burned the garbage. Unloading trucks as I got older, stocking shelves. As I became a teenager, working the cash register. My sister Gail, who's a little bit older than me, and I'm being generous to her. She was very involved. She worked the cash register. She stocked shelves. She worked the deli. And we were involved in it. It was a family operation. Plus, we had a lot of great employees that were Dalton people. All of them were Dalton people, as I recall. And actually, while I'm sitting here, I brought out a little prop to show you guys.
Paul's Market.
It says Paul's Market, Dalton, PA.
Yes, these T-shirts were made probably, and I'm not putting it on because there's no way it would fit me now, because I was probably about 13 or 14 when these T-shirts were made. But I still have a couple of them in my closet, and I dug one out for you guys today.
Looks like it's in great shape.
I haven't worn it too much because I like to keep one of them around that's in good shape, just so I can keep it around and not wear it and ruin it.
Does Dalton stay with you, Pat? Is it a part of you in some way?
Oh, it's a huge part of me. I love, and I come up there. I haven't been up there the last couple years, but for many years I would come up. Part of my job as a sports writer, I worked a lot of hours during the season, but during the off season, I got a lot of time off. They would usually give me the month of June off, and I would come up to Dalton and spend the whole month there because there was no place that I would rather be.
You mentioned Don Westcott to me. What can you tell us about him?
Don Westcott lived catty corner behind us, directly behind, and I know Joe and Yvette Vinson. He lived directly behind them and across the street from the Cornells. Very good man, very hardworking man, a good neighbor. I remember in later years when he didn't have the store to worry about any longer, he was almost fanatical about keeping his yard absolutely beautiful, and he always had a beautiful garden out there. I remember my dog used to jump the fence and get into his garden, and he wasn't too happy about that sometimes. But we still got along great, and he was a good friend of my dad's. Marion was a good woman too. Unfortunately, and Jeff probably remembers this better than I do, I believe Marion died soon after Don sold the store to my parents.
Yeah, not
he was only around for
I
a couple of years after that, really.
That I was thinking about. Uh, I'm, as I said, I'm older than you. So this cooler in the store when my Uncle Don Westcott had it still had ice, real ice. Now that was gone by the time your dad owned the store, right?
Yes, it was. Yeah, we had refrigeration in there. I do not remember the real
cooler,
ice.
the meat cooler and the dairy cooler, the truck came twice a week with huge blocks of ice. And there's something that nobody knows anything about now. And you had ice tongs and you'd get these 40, 50-pound blocks of ice, carry them into the cooler. Now,
Yeah.
when your parents were there, though, I have a wonderful visual image of them because your mom had red hair, as I remember it.
Yes, she
In
did.
fact, that's her family trait, as I remember it, right?
Well, I do too. But I have left kind of like a reddish blonde, but
But
it was very red when I was young.
your mom would be at the cash register and a big smile on her face, and I'd go in and no matter what was going on, what's new, how are you, what's going on, and any news you could get the latest news. It was like watching a cable news network.
I think that was part of what my mom enjoyed most about the store. My mom was a very social person, and yeah, she could give you some news on Dalton. She knew everything that was going on.
But I picture her in the front of the store, so that's where you first would come upon her. Now, your dad, Paul, in the back, I thought Paul was a wonderful guy. He was a guy from when they used the term the greatest generation. I think he was a Marine, wasn't he?
Yes, he was a very proud Marine.
Very
Who
proud.
enlisted.
The world.
He lied about his age to enlist in the Marines. I believe he went in when he was only 16 or 17.
Yeah.
And he went in and did his 6 weeks of basic training with the Marines, and he got thrown into some pretty heavy combat.
Yeah.
He was on Okinawa when he was 17, 18-year-old kid. And, that was one of the worst battles in the history of the world. But thank God he survived it.
Yeah.
And
that's why I remember Paul as just a wonderful guy. And in the back, and he's working, he's cutting meat. But
and a lot of times he would wear the Marine hat, and there were. I still remember the 6th Marine banner. He had like a big, almost like a supersized poster-sized bumper sticker hanging on the wall back in the meat department. So he was very, very proud of the fact he was a Marine.
Now, did you didn't go to the old school on Lily Lake Road, did you? You went to the Red Brick School downtown.
I went to kindergarten there, and then I went to Our Lady of Peace until 7th grade or 8th grade, and that's when I switched over to Lackawanna Trail.
And your oldest sister, she went there, didn't she?
She did, yeah. At least she started there. She might have switched over when they transitioned to the new school. I'm not really sure on that.
Yes. We were all involved in the transition because there was a Dalton school, and then the 3 towns, Dalton, Factorville, and Nicholson, were forming Lackawanna Trail School District.
Right.
And they were closing the old school. And what I was going to say was, I remember you have a number of siblings. How many of you are there?
I have 2 sisters.
So I would
Gail, who lives in West Scranton, is 8 years older than me, and Carol, who's in North Carolina, I believe, is 12 years older than me.
So let me say this. Now, at the time, probably some people that are listening will remember this. Some of the people that are here will remember it too. There were patrol boys, and I was a patrol boy for our side of town, which meant that any of the kids that had to walk to school, and we all walked to school then, I would put my belt on with a white strap going across my shoulder and another one around my waist.
Shake hands. I was one too.
And it was my job to safely ensure that everybody from the west side of town got through the dreaded downtown Dalton, where all the crime occurred, over to the school on the end of Mill Street. So you probably don't even remember that, but I was the patrol boy from that side of town. Took great pride in getting all these kids down. And there was a time early on that we would even walk home for lunch in between them.
Yeah. Well, I think the Dalton grade school kids, even when I was going to Our Lady of Peace, I think that those kids could go home for lunch. As far as patrol boys, they didn't have them by the time I came along. They graduated to crossing guards, and we had. I remember, and you'll probably remember this gentleman. I believe his first name was Emerson Stanton.
Yes,
who was also the police chief.
He was the police chief. Yeah.
But he was a crossing guard for at least a few minutes every afternoon and every morning.
Now, your house was on the extended end of Thompson Street, which was nice. It was a dead-end street.
Right.
And Joe is part of our organization. He was in the first house, and then you were in the second house. Was it while you lived there that you raised the roof on that house?
Yes, they did that in advance of me. My parents moved to Dalton. They got married in 1949. My oldest sister was born in 52. I think they moved to Dalton before she was born. And then I think as I was coming along, it was a one-story house, and they knew they needed more room, and they literally raised the roof on the house. They had it jacked. They had it jacked up somehow, and they made it into a two-story house. And I think they also added another. I think they might have done an addition first to the first floor, and then added the roof.
But as a little kid, I watched them raise the roof. I thought
Yeah.
it was one of the most interesting things.
Yeah, they used to talk about that all the time.
Raise the roof on that house. And then Eva Kellogg built
Even Kellogg was next to us on the other side, yeah. And her husband, Charlie.
Eva Kellogg was a Decker that was the third dairy around here. The Decker's dairy was in Factoryville, and she and Charlie were some of my grandparents' best friends.
Oh.
They lived their life in Pittsburgh running a grocery store and moved back in the 60s to live at the end of
Exactly.
Then one more house after that was Marianne Catcher built a house on the end of it. And that's
Right. And her mother was Wanda.
The safe little tucked in part of the neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great block to to grow up in. And also you mentioned the Vincents, who are dear friends of mine, all of them. But before the Vincents moved in, Jack and Carolyn Sanders lived in their house. And I believe that was well, I know it was when Kevin Vincent was like 5 or 6 years old. So I was probably about 11 or 12 when the Vincents bought that house.
And before them was Claude Numbers. So I'm older.
I remember my parents talking
Claude
about
Numbers lived in that house.
Pat, let's turn to your career in sports broadcasting now.
Okay.
How and when did you get into that field? Where have you worked? And how did you come to ESPN?
Okay. Well, just to clarify a little bit, I mean, sports broadcasting has been a part of my career, but I'm mainly a sports writer. But the way the media business has evolved, you kind of got to be a jack of all trades. And I've made lots of television and radio appearances, but primarily I've made my living as a sports writer. I went to college. I graduated from St. Leo University in St. Leo, Florida, which is 35 miles north of Tampa. And I graduated with a degree in pre-law, wanted to be a lawyer, and started law school, got through the first semester, came home to my parents. My parents by this time had retired and were living in Dade City, Florida. I came home to their house there and over Christmas break, and I was sick, and turned out I had mono, and I had to withdraw from law school because you can't miss much time there. And I was planning on going back the following January and picking up with that class. But in the meantime, I'd done some sports writing while I was in college, doing some high school games for the Tampa Tribune. And I started doing that once I started feeling better, just part-time to earn a little money. And they offered me a full-time job, and I took it, still thinking I would go back to law school. But after a few months, I liked it so much that I said, you know what, I'm having fun with this. I don't know that law was going to be that much fun. So I decided to stick with it, and I was with the Tampa Tribune, covered high schools for the first couple of years, and then they put me on the NFL Buccaneers in 1993, and I did that for the Tampa Tribune through August of 1999. Got an offer from the Charlotte Observer in Charlotte, North Carolina, to cover the Carolina Panthers, and I took that, and I was in Charlotte from 1999 until 2007, at which point ESPN wanted to hire me to cover the entire NFC South, which meant Tampa, Carolina, Atlanta, and New Orleans. And they said I could live wherever I wanted. Well, my father had passed away in 2007 in May, and this was in December. And my mom was basically alone down in the Tampa area, and I wanted to be closer to her. So I took the ESPN job, and I moved back to the Tampa area, mainly to be close to her. And I was with ESPN until 2016. And since then, I've kind of slowed down a little bit, and I freelance now for a bunch of different newspapers, magazines, websites. I've done a little bit of work for Sports Illustrated, the Sporting News, University of Tampa Alumni Magazine. But it's been a great career and something that I never imagined when I was a little kid in Dalton. But it's been kind of a dream job because obviously I love sports, and it turned out, fortunately, I was able to write pretty well and had some good teachers at Our Lady of Peace and Lackawanna Trail that helped me along the way. And the love of sports and the ability to write just
Pat,
led
what
to a
would
very
you
nice
say
career
were the
for me.
most memorable experiences you had while with ESPN?
Well, over the course of the two newspapers and ESPN, I got to cover 23 Super Bowls. Um, I think the two most memorable experiences, though, were through the years I got to cover the Pro Bowl in Hawaii 5 or 6 times, which was fantastic because I got paid to go to Hawaii, and usually I would spend an extra week there on my own dime and get around a little bit and got to really enjoy it. Plus, with the time difference, even while I was working, my deadlines were pretty early, and I still had time to get around Hawaii. That was great. And then the other, probably my favorite assignment was in, I believe it was 2009 or 2010. The NFL played some games in London, and I was covering the New Orleans Saints, and they were playing a game with the San Diego Chargers in London, and I got to spend a full week in London, and it was a great experience. First and only time I've been off the U.S. continent. I've been to Canada and Mexico, but it's first time to Europe and only time to Europe, and that's a trip that will always stand with me. Just a great experience, and had a great time doing it.
Who were some of the most famous figures in or out of the sports world that you either met or interviewed?
Um, you name any NFL player, I interviewed him at one point or another, whether it was in a group setting or individually. Tom Brady, Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, any of those guys, I dealt with them at one time or another. Far as outside of the sports world, there were some great opportunities, where I'd meet people at NFL parties and stuff like that. I'm drawing a blank on anyone that really stands out. I don't know. It'll hit me later.
That's okay.
And it'll be
You
a good
must have met
answer.
so many.
Yeah.
Jeff, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think it's good. And it's been nice talking to you and hearing how your life's gone so well since you left Dalton. Somebody must have done right. In
Hang on.
Dalton.
Let me jump back. Let me jump back in because
Sure.
Jeff, one of my very first assignment at ESPN, and one of my favorite assignments, and these people weren't necessarily famous outside of Northeastern Pennsylvania, but they were some of the best people I ever met. And Jeff, I'm pretty sure that you taught this guy, Chris Snee,
Oh, absolutely. Two-time
at Montrose High School.
Chris Snake.
Okay. All right. Well, I got hired by ESPN, and it was January of 2007, 2008. And to get credentials for the Super Bowl, you have to apply for them with that particular media outlet. You have to apply for them in like October. So I was already credentialed with the Charlotte Observer, but I wasn't working for the Charlotte Observer anymore. So ESPN couldn't send me to the Super Bowl. So they said, look over the rosters of both teams, the New York Giants and the New England Patriots, and look at the hometowns and find us a good hometown story. Well, I looked at the rosters, got on the New York Giants roster, saw Chris Snee, Montrose, Pennsylvania, and I said, that's where I'm going because I know Montrose. Montrose is, basically pretty similar to Dalton. So I pitched the idea. My editors loved it. I flew into Avoca and drove up to Montrose and spent the better part of 3 days there getting to know the Snee family and just awesome people, great people in Montrose. Tom Lucenti, who had been the football coach for Chris. I know he was a friend of yours because we discussed you the day I met him. And he was a tremendous help to me. And after I got done in Montrose, then I drove down to New Jersey to the Meadowlands and got to spend some time with Chris. And turned out what, I don't like to pat myself on the back, but I turned out what was probably one of my better stories in my career. Just a real feel-good story on a kid from a small town who made it big and was playing in the Super Bowl. And he obviously had a tremendous career and, just a great human being. And I know he's doing very well right now as well.
Chris Sneed was wonderful. I had him in school, and he was a very smart guy too. When the two stories about Chris Sneed, which are good, is he was he was a good high school football star, and he wanted to play football for Penn State. And he went to Penn State when Joe Paterno was still the coach there. And Joe Paterno said, and I know he went there because Chris couldn't tie his own tie. I tied his tie for him the day he went to see Joe Paterno. And he went down, and Joe Paterno said, well, you're too small and you're too slow. Chris Sneed went on to star at Boston College, the New York Giants, 2 Super Bowl rings.
Wow. Pat, I'd like to ask you this then, since we have a little more time.
Sure.
And that is, was there one sport that you most enjoyed covering and writing about?
Well, it's funny because I spent most of my career covering the NFL. I did bits and pieces, helping out, doing sidebars, notebooks, or filling in for people when I was in my off season. But growing up in Dalton, baseball was my favorite sport. Ask anybody that knew me in Dalton, they would say baseball. And more recently, in some of my freelance work, I started doing some high school baseball. And in a weird way, that's kind of brought me back to my roots. I spent some of the most important and most fun years of my life around high school baseball, and being around it again has been wonderful. And this Lackawanna Trail hat that I'm wearing right now comes from Todd Peters, the Lackawanna Trail baseball coach, and also a teacher at the elementary school. Todd was a teammate of mine and a very good friend of mine, and he makes sure that I get a Lackawanna Trail baseball hat every year.
Pat, on behalf of Jeff Cornell and every member of the Dalton Historical Society, I thank you for being our guest on this edition of Stories from the Hollow. Our best to you. Our best to you.
It was absolutely my pleasure.
And to everyone who joined or joins us for this podcast. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.